Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Julie Hirschberg, and I'm the founder. I run Re+active Physical Therapy and Wellness here in Los Angeles, where our mission is to help people with neurologic diagnoses, chronic diseases, recover movement and strength and confidence. And I'm so happy to have you here today. So happy to have somebody with me. Again, if you're new, welcome so much. I already see Amy and Betsaida here joining us live. Hello, happy Friday, thank you. And very excited about the topic today because it's been very personal for me and my family. We're gonna be talking about migraines, but before we dive in, you need to meet Naoya. He is the new occupational therapist here at Re+active, and honestly, our whole team couldn't be more excited to have him here. We already had just like a really fun morning, in my opinion, doing some co-treats with some of our clients, and I just really love working in a team so much. So that's why I'm excited that he's here. But before we dive into migraines, then I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of your passion.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. So hi, everyone. My name is Naoya, and I'm the new OT here. My background is mostly in what I call lifestyle interventions for chronic conditions. So if you think about your physical and mental health, whatever it is, the severity of your symptoms might fluctuate based on like how you're eating, how you're exercising, how your sleep is, and how you're managing your stress. And so my focus with people when I'm working with them is usually establishing healthy routines that can make you feel physically and mentally better. And I really enjoy that kind of health coaching approach because it's really engaging. It's really about making these small changes and feeling a little bit more empowered about how much control we have over our health.
Yeah, that's awesome, which is why we're so excited to have you as a part of our team. And even just thinking about some of the things that we worked with some people this morning and how powerful that can be to help them regain some control, because the stress level of feeling out of control when you have a major neurologic disorder is pretty high. And I think you can find that in migraine for sure. So today's topic is all about migraine. Now, of course, just like any topic, we could have like a whole weekend course on it. So we're just gonna like really hit the surface, but in particular, talk about how OT would approach migraine. And I have to start, of course, with a personal story because my younger daughter, who is 9 years old, she was just diagnosed with migraines this past year. And she actually, in retrospect, had a very clear presentation. But I think when you think of kids and when they start throwing up, you're like, okay, they got the stomach flu or something like that. Well, that's kind of happening frequently for her, which is unusual, right? And then, you know, kids often also don't complain of actually having a headache. And sometimes, as we know with migraine, there might not actually be head pain. There might be other things. So honestly, I had missed some of the like signs of it. And then there was a couple of week period where she had several and the signs became very clear. So come home, feel like really like lethargic, very sensitive to light and sound, start throwing up, go into her room, turn off the lights, go to sleep, boom, wake up in a few hours and feel amazing. So not the flu, not a stomach bug. And as we saw that pattern happen a few times, it was like, okay, let's get to the doctor, let's get this confirmed. But it really did have all the hallmark patterns of migraine. My husband also experienced migraine, so this was not unfamiliar to us, and probably not unfamiliar to anyone we know. It's very common. Probably many of you have had migraines or know people with migraines. So she was diagnosed with migraines, and it definitely sent me into the migraine world, just researching all the literature. I attended a course. We teach about headache in the course that I teach at USC, and differentially diagnosing it and kind of understanding the mechanisms, but there's so much new stuff out there in headache and migraine specifically, and a lot that PTs and OTs do, which I think is really, really neat, because a lot of times the medications may not be helpful, and it's these lifestyle, maybe some musculoskeletal issues that can be really, really helpful. So I'm very excited to talk, especially with Naoya, about this. So let's talk about maybe first how we know this is a migraine, because I think this is probably one of the biggest pieces, is you want to make sure you're treating the right thing, right?
Right. Yeah, I think, Julie, you brought up a really good point about how it took a while, for a pattern to emerge before you knew what was going on. And that can be the case with headaches and migraines, especially because sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the two. Sometimes people have both and they have two different kinds of headaches, but it's sometimes hard to distinguish those things. So usually when someone comes in complaining of some sort of pain in the head, I usually go through a little bit of like a problem-solving process where we figure out, what could be happening and what could be the triggers of it. So the first thing that I want to touch upon is the difference between what we understand tension headaches and more traditional migraines. And headaches and migraines, they do overlap sometimes. It's hard to distinguish sometimes, even for doctors and specialists. But in general, tension headaches are more, you notice more muscle tension and more muscular related symptoms. And so you might feel a lot of like a band type pressure on the head. A lot of times those things can be triggered by stress, which can increase your muscle tension, poor posture, or some underlying imbalances in your posture, positioning, things like that. Migraines, on the other hand, you can understand it more as an overactive nervous system. So the way that I like to explain it to people is your brain is usually in some sort of homeostasis. So everything is in good balance. But if something in the environment or something that you're doing throws that balance off, your brain can become a little bit overwhelmed. And in that process, that can generate some pain that you might experience. Usually, it could be a little bit asymmetrical. So migraines tend to move around a little bit more. Migraines also is accompanied by, sometimes by visual changes. So a little bit of flashing lights. Sometimes that can come with a lot of nausea and sickness. And so with migraines and headaches, I think the first stage is getting the person to understand what might be happening, what's my pain pattern. And once we understand that, we can figure out what are some of the factors that might be contributing to these pain.
Yeah, so that's really great. And sometimes people have, a lot of times by the time they get to us, they've explored a lot of doctors, gotten things ruled in and ruled out, because of course you want to rule out major neurologic problems for sure. And then they've gotten the diagnosis, right? And it's up to us to kind of confirm that there's not other things going on. I've certainly seen people, right, that have tension headaches and migraines, right? Like they can go hand in hand, and you want to treat both of those. But you mentioned this idea of uncovering some of the underlying factors. So how do you help someone do that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just boils down to self-awareness, and I bring this up not so much in just trying to imply that someone who has a headache doesn't have awareness of the pain, because it's very real, it's very palpable, of course. But sometimes with migraines, what's complicated about it is there are so many different things that can impact it. Some of it, a lot of people might already know, but food can be a trigger. Sometimes dehydration, lack of sleep. But also things like hormonal changes, either like stress hormones or the menstrual cycle, or sometimes even the weather. So temperature and barometric pressure changes can be triggers. A lot of times with migraines, though, when it is a complicated case and a lot of medication doesn't work or doesn't work as well as you would like it to, what might be happening is there's multiple factors that are contributing to the triggering. So it's hard to detect some of these patterns. So maybe it's not so much just like the food that's a trigger, but maybe it's the food, and then on top of that, you didn't get enough sleep, and then you're stressed that week. When all these factors align, maybe you get like a 2-day long migraine or something like that. So a lot of it, the first step is, I think, tracking the migraine symptoms if you haven't done that before, which can be done either on paper, or you can use an app called my Migraine Buddy, I think, is a good app to. Yeah, it's a good one to just track what's happening, when the migraines are coming on, what the symptoms are like. Or if your migraines are not too frequent, you can also just do some like a little bit of a mental checklist. But really the first step is figuring out, when are these migraines coming? How long are they lasting? And what did I do differently that day, or sometimes a day or 2 days before that migraine hit, really uncover some of the underlying factors.
Yeah, that's great. And that's exactly what we were doing with my daughter, right? It can be a little more tricky with kids.
Right.
But, it seemed to not necessarily be a certain food. Sleep seemed to be a pattern, specific, testing happening at school maybe. But I think, like you said, it wasn't one thing. It was like this layered approach, which can be, quite complicated. And I think this is where like PT, OT working together is very nice. So when somebody has a lot of factors associated, like how would you see kind of the OT role? And maybe I could talk a little bit about the PT role as well.
Right. So when there's a lot of different factors that are impacting migraine or triggering the migraine, with OT, like I traditionally focus a little bit more on the environmental side of things and also the psychosocial side of things. And so environmental, if some sensory triggers are present in the environment, whether it's light, sound, whatever it is, we might modify your workspace, we might modify your home so you're not exposed to those triggers as frequently. With stress management, we could take more of like a cognitive approach. So thinking about, what are the environments where your stress levels are increasing? What are the reasons why it's increasing? Can we develop some coping strategies around it? And that's more of like a preventative approach. But with stress management, we can also take more of a more immediate approach where it's we might do some relaxation skills training, mindfulness skills training, and those are really useful. I found that clinically, a lot of people who have migraines, when they're in the middle of a migraine attack, it's nice to have some tools that help bring down the pain perception. So I've done like body scans, just like mental imagery meditation, things like that, just to have more toolboxes to deal with the pain.
Yeah, amen to that. I'm going to bring you home with me when either my daughter or my husband is experiencing a migraine, and like, let's all body scan together. I think that's so, so important. I think so many times we think about migraines as just kind of being like, well, here it is, there's nothing I can do. And so just even having like an ounce of control or something in the toolbox, it brings so much like hope and efficacy that there's some control there.
I think that's so true, because with headaches, it's not just pain, it's difficulty focusing, difficulty thinking. Sometimes with the pain comes mood changes, so notice that you're a little bit more irritable. So in terms of like how severely impactful it is, I think like coping strategies and feeling a little bit more control over the pain, at least playing a bigger role in the pain management. I think that can be a little bit of a relief for some people. Yeah,
it is for me, for sure. And I think what's really great then is that working alongside OT, this really allows the PT to be very specific and address some of those underlying triggers as well. So there might be biomechanical issues, movement patterns, prolonged movement patterns, maybe even just overall neurologic function and some of that homeostasis, like reining in that sensitivity of the nervous system and uncovering either a sensory motor issue that might be contributing and be able to address that. And then, what I think about, because we haven't always had a really great OT who understands the complexities of these issues on our team, then we can help somebody get better faster by being able to really address all angles of it, which makes me so, so excited. One of the things that I had mentioned in this Facebook Live, we wanted to be able to share some stories. So certainly I was actually talking to our team just yesterday, Naoya and Chelsea, about bringing my daughter in. You know, she was born with torticollis, and torticollis is a tightening in kids, muscular tightening in some of the neck muscles, and for her it would pull her head to the side and a little turn. It can be fairly common, very treatable. We went to physical therapy as a kid, but as she has gone through growth spurts, you can see just a little bit of it. And it makes me think about the potential for some musculoskeletal issues, maybe contributing to the migraines, and being able to explore some of these other factors for her as well. So I can't wait for her to see you guys. I don't know how she feels about it, but I'm super excited. But I really had to share a story because literally this just happened yesterday, that I got to meet a really great client here at Re+active who finished and was heading out the door, and he, you know, grabbed me. I was able to chat a little bit with him, and this was a client of Chelsea Brown, a really phenomenal success story. I think gives great hope for people who have migraines, and felt that there was not really a chance at all, any hope for change in that. Because that was certainly the case for this gentleman. He had a 6-year history of migraines with an aura. And so that was something that you had mentioned now, yeah, like having maybe some of these visual symptoms. The aura can be quite different for each person. So his actually manifested as some cognitive changes, this like transitory temporary cognitive changes, as well as some visual changes. He had really seen many specialists that we work with a lot in the area. No relief from medical management, but did get that definitive diagnosis of a migraine with aura. So in meeting with Chelsea, they were able to explore, identify, discover some of those common triggers, things he hadn't explored before with different foods, the amount of light, the type of light, the time at his computer, the posture while at his computer being a big contributing factor. He had decreased neck mobility, some stiffness, all seeming to, again, it's a complex picture. It's not one of those things was not the thing. It was all of those pieces together. He had 10 weeks and 10 sessions, so once a week for 10 weeks. It included a lot of education and self-management, which is a huge part of what we're empowering people to do. Postural strengthening, this nervous system toning activities like Naoya mentioned, the mindfulness and breathing associated with that, movement re-education for his posture and the way he moved with his neck, manual therapy for improving his range of motion, and then carrying that over into function. So a pretty comprehensive routine and plan for him. And, you know, this is not always the case, but, you know, he grabbed me yesterday. He hasn't had a migraine since. And these were happening several times a week, is my understanding of it. And he is now running. What he reports too is that he's just able to breathe. So a lot of people are really unaware of the breathing pattern. I know before I started practicing mindfulness, I wasn't really aware of how I was breathing, and the effect it has on neck muscles, which some of that can be triggering for migraines. And much improved posture with his everyday activities. One of the greatest things that he reported is that he actually improved his golf game, and he's now shooting 230 yards. So he's been to many golf coaches, and he was just astounded that addressing some of these things improved that as well. And you know, all of that goes into actually improving the whole sensitivity of the nervous system. If you can golf and enjoy it and feel good about it, the whole, you know, your brain's happy with that. And then the nervous system sensitivity can actually lower. So I think that's really really important. Kind of a funny side effect that's wasn't a goal, right? They weren't working on golf swing, but by improving some of the underlying triggers, that actually improved. So just a really great outcome. He was very thankful as he left yesterday, and he was kind of like, look, I hope I don't see you again, which is like the best outcome to me, you know, like, yeah, come to our anniversary party, but hopefully you really won't need therapy again. No, it's not to say he'll never have a migraine, right? This is kind of part of our nervous systems, but he has so many tools to prevent and to manage now. And certainly if something came up, maybe he would come back in for a check-in and to maintain and prevent. But for now, he's actually going free. And even a decrease in the frequency is a great result, right? For people who have migraine. So you know, the approach with, oops, looks like our video has been paused. Let's see. What happened to our Wi-Fi?
Is your browser working?
It looks like it is. It does. I know it says pause. Oh, that's the sync. Something is working really hard here, though. Let's just see. We're just going to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Let's see if we open another new tab in Google Chrome here. See that.
Oh. Maybe it's just. I wonder if it's still streaming.
Maybe it is. Here we are talking and looking at it, and maybe it's still going. Thanks, Betsaida, for your note as we're staring at the screen here. It says to us that it's trying to reconnect. We were winding up anyway. But I think one of the key points in this case, and all of them, is so individual, right? It really is so person specific. Everybody has a different triggers, different nervous system sensitivities, and it's important to explore those and get an individualized approach. But there are common things that we do try to look at to see if they're underlying triggers, like the food and the sleep and all of those things. And we have actually outlined our approach for our headache program. This is a handout that we provide to our clients. And I would love to share it with you. So if you join our education newsletter, it's at reactivept.com/education, and click on sign up in the newsletter sign up and click on the free resources. We'll send you that resource to just further explore some of those things for yourself and start to build a team for yourself to improve your life with migraine. And thank you so much. Sorry for that little glitch in the middle where we thought it had gotten stuck, but it didn't. So thanks for sticking around with us. It was really great to be here. Great to have Naoya here. I think we're going to have to do this again. It was really fun. And we will catch you next week.